I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Kevin Hammer is going to give us the invocation and the pledge. Please stand.
Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you for allowing us to come together as a community. We ask that you be with those that could not be with us today and watch over them, keep them safe. We just ask that you watch over this board as we make decisions together collectively that are in the best interest of this community. All those things in your name.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. We move now to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Ms. Ritz?
I second.
Thank you. Please vote. And I'd like to also, once again, thank the co-chair, Mr. Perkins, for doing such a fine, fine job last month. As we move to open forum. Do we have anyone who wants to speak today? I don't have any pink slips. I'm sorry, the vote was 7-0. We move now to the approval of the minutes. Do you have a motion? Not a hard one.
Move the approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ben. And a second?
Second.
Mr. Hammer, thank you. I wanted to make one comment. We can go ahead and vote, but I was going to make a comment that I noticed, since I wasn't here, I read them really thoroughly. Anyway, I read on the recycling of razors by TerraCycle. That was some interesting information, and I noticed this week, and that passes 8-0. Why do we have only 7 on the first vote?
Mine didn't come up to vote.
Oh, it didn't? But you voted?
Yes, I tried.
Okay. Can we make sure that the record reflect, Ms. Ben? Okay, thank you. Anyway, there was something on the media this week about, and I shared it, about hearing aids that are being recycled by the Lions Club, and I thought that was very interesting. So I'd like to ask staff to share that information on our social media and our newsletter. We move now to...
Madam
Yeah.
Chairman, I would also like to say that the Lions Club collects eyeglasses and frames,
Great.
so.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We move now to item F, awarded bid on page 15 of the Mackey Key Sewer Rehabilitation System.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Ms. Ritz?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? Mr. Sorrell, do you want to say a couple of words about this before we vote?
Yes, ma'am, I can explain it to you if you'd like. This is a sewer system. It's in an area that's below the scenic drive, I guess it is, as it comes up around the bay. And it's in a very low area. We inherited this system some time ago. We found that it doesn't meet any of our standards. Most of it's through a swamp, and it makes it very difficult for us to maintain. It's in poor shape. So what we're going to do is just replace the force main system that's there, so we don't have these problems in the future, particularly with SSOs in a swamp area that's very near Escambia Bay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ritz?
When I read through the materials to prep, I had noted, what is the impact on the air release valve replacement now with the transfer of funds?
Mr. Sorrell?
No, there shouldn't be any impact on that. We have to move money around from time to time throughout the entire year, so it shouldn't have any impact on that. We're constantly repairing the air release valves, but this shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you. Good question, Ms. Ritz. If no further questions, please vote. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item G, award a bid for 2019-25 electric motor and submersible pump repair rewind services on page 17. Do I have a motion? Ms.
Move the
Benson?
recommendation.
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Booker. I have a whole new outlook on you with those two voice songs I heard today.
I'm saying somebody's a short timer.
Yeah, I was about to say, he's getting close to retirement.
Okay, that hit me really. Okay, sorry. Mr. Sorrell, do you want to tell us a little bit about this one?
The true story is I just got this phone and I'm still trying to figure out how to do all these things. It's one of the new ones and it's a little bit beyond my capability, so I'll see if I can work on that. This one in front of you, ma'am, is the electric motor and submersible pump repair contract. We actually went out to bids on it and we only got one bid, Gulf Coast Electric Motor Services. They've worked for us for years. They do a great job. And actually it makes us very pleased that we did receive them as the bid, because many times the work that we do has an emergency attached to it, and we just have to have things repaired very quickly. And Gulf Coast, they just take these motors and pumps and they repair them quickly, and we get them back in service. So, ma'am, this is one I highly recommend.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Walker.
This company is one that we've done business with for the entire time that I've been on the board, and there's never been a challenger to it, and I think it's gotten all of this kind of business of ours for a good 25 years or more. It's just a very good company.
Thank you, sir. No further comments or questions. Please vote. Need one, Deb? Okay. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item H on page 23, annual purchase of Purafil odor control filter media.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask a question
Yes,
of
sir.
Mr. Sorrell regarding this previous topic?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My question is is this the only company in town that is qualified to carry out this contract, and that's why there's only one bidder, or are there others that just that could do it but don't bother to bid because they know Gulf Coast is probably gonna get it?
Mr. Sorrell.
Yes, ma'am. I believe it's the latter, sir. There are other companies that can do this kind of work. The problem is that some of these are huge motors and huge pumps, and a lot of the companies really have trouble making the repairs in a short period of time, where Gulf Coast has most of the materials available, so they're able to do it and meet our specifications. We also bid this on a regional basis. Somebody from Mobile or anywhere else could have really bid this, but the colonel, he's pretty specific on what he has to have fixed and when. And, Gulf Coast just does a great job, as you know.
Madam Chairman, if this was the only company in town that could do this work, it's sort of scary. What if they didn't bid? Then we'd be up a creek without
Exactly.
a paddle. I hope there are some others that are becoming better qualified, I guess I should say.
Thank you. Something we're running across a lot lately is young people not, training up in these vocational jobs and new companies like this taking hold. So it's a busy time, and that's a good thing for the community. We move now to item, got off here, H on page 23. It's the annual purchase of Purafil odor control filter media. Do I have a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Ben and Ms. Ritz.
I second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? I think this is
I have a
a
comment.
filter media for odor control.
I have a comment.
Ms. Ritz?
Appreciated all the charts that were listed for this particular purchase. It helped bring clarity.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further questions, comments? If not, please vote. Dr. Walker, I'm sorry, Dr. Walker.
Okay, under staff contacts regarding this subject on page 25, you might note Mary Taylor is the head of this, she's manager of lift stations and generators. She may, and it's quite possible she's the only female head of lift stations and generators in the country.
Thank you, sir. Please vote. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item I, waiver of bidding for liquid polymer. Mr. Sorrell, I think we've tried other of these, right?
Yes, ma'am. This is what we use. It's flocculant we use at the wastewater treatment plants. And basically, the way that works is we get a lot of suppliers that come and say they have the best product in the world and how well it works and so on and so forth. So what we do is we require them to provide us with samples. We use those and we can rate which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones are most expensive, and so on. And the one in front of you is the one that we have found to be the most effective at the least cost. And we recommend that. I hate to say it, but everybody thinks they're a snake oil salesman and they bring us things and say how great it is, and it just doesn't work. This does.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Do I have a motion? Sorry, motion.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Booker, thank you. And if no further comments or questions, please vote. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item J, air curtain incinerator purchase on page 29. Do I have a, you know what? I believe Randy's come in. I'm gonna go ahead and get a motion. Do I have a motion?
Move the
Ms.
recommendation.
Benson? Do I have a second to get it on the,
Second.
thank you, Mr. Perkins. And I believe Mr. Red is gonna speak with us about this new air curtain incinerator.
Whether you intended to or not.
I asked him to.
Yes, ma'am. This air curtain incinerator is basically a piece of equipment that's used in the land clearing industry for disposal of large stumps and logs. We generate a lot of these at both the Perdido landfill and our compost facility. We can grind them with the two ECUA-owned grinders, but it's difficult work. It increases the wear on the machines. So we'd like to purchase this piece of equipment specifically for disposing of stumps and logs. There are some other uses we can look at. We've done some preliminary testing on some other equipment. We will have to work with DEP, but there's possibility we could dispose of construction and building debris in this unit, and as well as possibly mixed paper from the MRF that's beyond the condition where we can market it.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Mr. Perkins?
I know that we were beta testing an incinerator and it didn't work out for the use we were intended. Is this a result of that test? It's something we might be able to use the same type thing for?
Yes, it's just a different version of that equipment.
Yeah. And so, the way I understand it, the fuel for the incinerator is the actual products that we're putting in there, the stumps or whatever, so we don't have a fuel cost.
That's correct.
So the more the merrier. So like, it may be possible that like if we have a storm and we have lots of big stumps, that this might assist us quite a bit in that type of scenario.
That is another reason we're interested in having this. These are used extensively for storm cleanup, and this would be available for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Dr. Walker?
Why is it, Madam Chairman, why is it called a air curtain incinerator?
Basically, the way the equipment's designed, it's a big metal box, but it has blowers that blow a curtain of air across the top of the opening, and that's meant to restrict the amount of embers that will leave the box, and also superheats the air in the box so it burns faster.
Do we have any idea of locations of where this might?
This is a portable unit. We can move it around with one of our roll-off trucks.
Okay. Ms. Ritz?
What is the maintenance anticipated on this unit?
It's minimal. The only moving part is the blower that blows the air.
Thank you, Randy. Dr. Walker?
Will its primary location be at the CWRF?
Yes.
So the elimination of embers, we wouldn't be worried about our fields up there, I mean, our,
That's correct.
Timber.
We're also discussed utilizing it in the middle of a spray field. So in the event we do have a problem with embers, we'll just turn on the spray field.
there you go. Wonderful. Well, good luck to you, sir. If we vote this in, I'm wishing you all the luck in the world. This would be great to use for mixed paper. Right? Thank you. Please vote. And I believe you got an enthusiastic 8-0 vote on that. We move now to item K on page 32, purchase of dumpster and roll-off containers for the commercial service. Do I have a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Ben. And thank you, Ms. Booker, for a second. Do I have any questions? Ms. Benson?
Just in a related issue, are we out of our regular trash and recycling cans right now for new customers and replacements? If I
Mr.
could ask
Rudd.
Mr. Rudd.
Thank you.
No, ma'am, we have inventory in stock now.
Okay, I need to talk to you later about
Yes,
a
ma'am.
customer. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Are we now handling the can replacement in-house, or do we still have a contract?
No, sir, we are under contract with Auto Container Maintenance until the end of the year.
Till the end of the year?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
The end of the fiscal year or the end of the calendar year?
Calendar year.
Mr. Sorrell?
No, I was just going to have Randy explain. We just bought a bunch of cans on an emergency purchase because we were out, as Mrs. Benson mentioned. And so we just did an emergency purchase, and I think that's the reason why we've got cans, and I'm going to be reporting that to the board.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I had a couple of calls with cans that had been out for quite a while, so that explains it. Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Good questions, board. Any further questions on the roll-off containers for commercial service? If not, please vote. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item M, purchase of new tires for the ECUA fleet on page 36. Do I have a motion?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hammer, thank you. Any questions, comments? We're buying new tires for the fleet through the State of Florida Sheriff's Association approved local vendors. If no, Ms. Ritz?
Did we skip item L?
Did I skip an item?
Yes.
We did.
I am so sorry. But we'll go back to it. Let's go ahead since we're on this one and we got a motion and a second. Got ahead of myself. Make sure, we're just testing her today. Please vote on item M on page 36. We're testing you over there. and it passes 8-0. I'm gonna back up to item L,
Ms.
contract.
Campbell.
Yes, ma'am.
Could I ask a question?
Yes,
Before
ma'am.
we go back to that, since we have Mr. Rudd here? How are we doing with the location device, the GIF system that we are testing with the sanitation trucks?
We are approximately halfway through the pilot program. We've had a number of technical issues. The good news is we appear to be resolving some of those. If you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have said it wasn't going to work. I'm more hopeful this week. There's still some technical issues that have to be resolved, but it's looking much better.
Are we able, if I may
Go ahead,
continue,
yes, please.
Are we able to adapt the software in-house, or do we have to just deal with what they provide us?
No, we have to deal with what the company provides us.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Well, now that you've asked the question, I'm gonna do a follow-up since you're standing there. Could we work with a software provider of our own if we like the system but can't get the wrinkles out that we want? Would you be able to?
Well,
Awesome.
the software company is working with us to try to resolve the issues.
Okay,
But there's only so far they're willing to go. So,
Motion to reconsider.
thank you. You might wanna stick around, Dr. Walker. We're in a funny mood today.
Madam Chairman, I would just like to say I really hope this works
Yes,
because,
aren't we all?
and it's one of the many good ideas that Mr. Rudd has brought to us, and obviously this one has some kinks in it, but I hope he can work it out because it seems like it would be of great benefit to us and to our customers.
yeah, the staff's feeling is if it works the way it's advertised, it could be a huge benefit. But that's, like I said, we've got to work through some of the technical issues. Some of it's data issues on our side that have to be resolved. But we are working with the company to try to resolve all those issues.
Very good. They probably are very appreciative of you working with them as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now, we're backing up to item L, contract extension for truck tire retread services.
I got a question before you move on. It was actually on M that we just
Okay.
did. The question was, I get it, it's a purchase price on the tires, it's a standard price through the Florida Sheriff's Association or whatever. But how do we as ECUA determine what local vendors we're gonna use? Is it luck of the draw? This is my favorite place?
We look for the size, well, depending on the size of the tire, we'll get quotes from different vendors that are already on the contract and approved and just choose from whoever gives us the lowest quote.
How do those vendors get on that list though?
It's a competitively bid
Okay.
price.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's the Florida Sheriff's Association approved local vendors. So, yeah, it's part of their contract.
Yeah, they have to do a competitive bid process. No, great questions, great questions. So, back to item L, contract extension for truck tire retread services on page 34.
I move approval of the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Ben. Any questions or comments? I feel like Dr. Walker right now, because I'm going to say, I remember this company when I was in high school, being around. They were, you know how you remember Howell Tire, I remember the little commercials they used to have on television. If it rolls round or something like that, I don't remember now, but they've been around a long time. So, any questions, comments? If not, please vote. They say if make it 5 years, you're a successful company. I wonder what they say if you make it 50, because they've been around a long time. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item N, which is commercial sanitation truck purchase on page 38. Do I have a motion? Motion to buy new sanitation trucks. Ms. Ritz.
I move the staff recommendation.
He is a short timer.
I'll go back to my military days. We used to do that on purpose to people because that would cost you a drink. Drinks are on him.
Mr., do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Ritz. Do I have a second? Ms. Booker.
A second.
Thank you, ma'am. And let the question, do we have any questions, comments? Ms. Ritz.
What is the Sourcewell National Purchasing Contract Number? And then there it is. How was that generated?
Mr. Rudd.
Yes, ma'am. The Sourcewell contract is formally called the National Joint Powers Association. It is a government entity that bids all types of equipment nationwide, and they accept bids from the large national vendors for trucks, rolling stock, all kinds of items that could be used in a government operation. And that is, the pricing is based on that nationally bid contract.
Is there any other group, or is this the sole group?
No, there's other groups as well. We look at different contracts out there and see which prices are most advantageous for the ECUA, and that's what we selected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ritz. Any further questions?
Yeah,
Mr.
actually,
Hammer?
You caught my eye, or caught my attention. You said, so this is coming off a bid that's a government, I don't want to say backed process?
Yes, yes. The federal government, state governments all use this contract.
So I'm just using my personal experience from being in the military. I know the federal government, when it comes to buying stuff, they pay 5 times more than they should.
Yeah, that's not, not the case in these situations.
That's why I wanted to ask. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. Mr. Walker, Dr. Walker, sorry.
I do know that this price seems to be in line with prices we've been paying for garbage trucks or sanitation trucks of all types for as long as I can remember. They're all, right now, they're all up there in the high 200,000 range.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? If not, please vote. And it passes 8-0. We move now to item P, accidental water loss adjustment on page 43. I'm sorry, O, residential sanitation truck replacement lease program on page 40. I'm jumping ahead. I got a date, I guess. Do I have a motion? Item O, residential sanitation truck replacement lease program. Ms. Benson.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Ritz.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the cause of the fire?
Good question.
We believe it was a lightning strike.
Good old Mother Nature?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Benson.
Oh,
Any other comments or questions? If not, please vote. Speaking of fires, I saw a fire, and it passes 8-0. I saw a fire on the way in to downtown today that was right by the Navy base, and I saw the Blue Angels practicing. And I saw, and I'm telling you, I saw a fire truck moving. I've never seen a fire truck moving that fast in my life down Gulf Beach Highway. I kept looking at the news while I was in Rotary to see if there was anything in there. We move now to item P, accidental water loss adjustment on page 43. Mr. Sorrell, do you want to give us a little update on this?
Yes, I'll be glad to. This item was asked for to be brought back for consideration. Right now, we have water loss arrangements. First time, they're allowed a one-time adjustment, and we'll actually write off the water loss given certain circumstances. Then if there's a second water loss, we'll give them a 50% adjustment on the second loss. But beyond that, we don't provide any further losses. There's some people have come and asked for additional losses, some people who do a lot of construction of homes and rebuilding of apartments, and some are slumlords and others, and they come and they've asked for additional write-offs. And I asked our Director of Customer Service, Gabe Brown, he's back here, if he wants to come up to the podium. And basically, I've asked him to prepare this, and he's looked at it, and he does not recommend any additional write-offs. And he'll be able to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Walker. Oh, I'm sorry. Lois Benson.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and Mr. Brown can probably answer them. How much does this, our current policy, how much does it cost us a year?
Right now, with the 100%, we're looking at $405,000.
$405,000. And how much do we lose for water main breaks throughout the system? You might not have all of this information,
don't.
by the way. But do we have a sense of what our overall loss is for breaks? Because it would be interesting to have that
Right.
in the context. Okay. So, next question.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
we adjust, if I may continue.
Yes, please.
When we adjust the bill, we take off the water and sewer, or we take off the excess water and sewer.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So, what if, I mean, presumably when there is an excessive leak like this, it is not going through the sewer system. What if we made an adjustment to the sewer part of the bill for subsequent leaks?
We have that in place already.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I had this memory of it, but it wasn't part of the background, so good, thank you. That ends my questions.
Thank you. Dr. Walker, did you have a question?
Did
I don't know, your light was on.
I? Guess not.
Okay, Ms. Ben?
Yes, thank you. My question is, it says this is the adjustment for the entire time he or she is a customer at the ECUA. So it doesn't depend if they move and have a different kind of loss at a different location or another loss?
That is correct.
Okay, so
Yes.
it's not limited to one address?
Right. It's, the existing policy is on the customer. It's not on the property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Yes, and that brought me back to my the question I had in mind. And so the people pushing for a change are the owners of multiple units, rental units primarily, because they stand to lose, have a water loss problem at more than one place. When we created this policy, we were really thinking of the one place owner. So the multiple owners, the owners of multiple units have really raised a brand new question for us. And I have some sympathy for them, but don't want to lose a lot of money for ECUA either.
Right. Actually, Dr. Walker, it could triple what we lose by allowing this policy. We could easily lose $1.3 million a year if we dismiss the existing policy. And that would be because, as you talk about the renting tenants, the majority of these renting tenants are paying the one-time leak adjustment themselves. The property owner is not, because the bill is in the renting tenant name. So if we put this in place, we have 100-something thousand renting tenants. Say 10% of those tenants move one time every year. That could be 10,000 adjustments. We have 103,000 renting tenants. As the policy currently stands, whenever there's a leak, it's not the property owner asking for the one-time leak adjustment, it's the renting tenant. I think what you're thinking of would be those that are mastered metered. Then it's in the owner's name, but a lot of these renting properties are in the water bill is in the tenant's name.
Ms. Benson?
Well, and to follow up on that, it sort of suggests that the one-time leak adjustment should go with the property and not with the tenant. So presumably, if you have some kind of a leak at your property, you fix it. And then that's your one-time leak adjustment, as opposed to just moving a lot and you get it again and again and again.
But then we would have to address, as I was stating, the majority of the renting tenants, the owner don't want the water in their name. They want it in the tenant name to prevent that. So if this tenant has a leak and the owner doesn't fix it, they become responsible for it. And that's the dilemma that we're faced with the increase that it could cause upon us because, say for instance, point in case, I lived at a location. I had a leak at this location. A year later, I moved to a new location. I have a leak there. The water bill is in my name, so I can get 2 leak adjustments now. And that's what concerns us.
Ms. Benson, would you like to continue? No. Ms. Ritz?
I was just puzzling, the leak, does it have to be on one side or the other of the meter?
Yes, if it's on the customer side, that's how they're able to apply for the leak. If it's on ECUA side, it does not go through the meter.
Does the system of billing catch what I call the leak?
Yes, normally when customers have leaks and the consumption is extremely high, our billing department will catch it and send them a high consumption letter to make them aware of it. And that's normally will provoke them to call us.
But a letter transferring from here to there takes days. It might take 2 days, and so the leak is continuing. Is there another way that they can be alerted more quickly?
I'll have to speak with the billing manager about that and get back with you.
Mr. Perkins?
So I think I understand a lot of the complexities, and I think the push is from people who have multiple properties that are multi-metered, and they've experienced leaks over the years. I mean, they use it one time, say they have, 30 multifamily properties, and they used one in 1980. Well, then they're pretty much done as far as using another one, which seems kind of harsh. But did I hear you correctly when you say that we adjust the sewer portion without counting that toward them? The
Yes,
sewer portion of the
that's
bill?
not a one-time leak. The only reason we'll adjust the sewer portion, these leaks takes place in the service line, so it's not treated. And they have to provide us with the plumbing bill and a statement where the leak occurred. So if it went into the ground, it's not being treated by the
I
sewer.
wasn't aware of that because I've had people, call and they say, well, I've already used my one-time leak adjustment and I don't know if I want to burn up my 50% yet. And I didn't know that they had the option of, they can still have the sewer portion of that adjusted and it won't count against them.
That is correct. Normally, we convey that to the customers, but if you know anyone, just have them give me a call.
Thank you. Ms. Benson?
Yeah, and that's why I asked that question, because that's really a substantial
sense,
part
yeah.
of the bill. And if we can tell them that they do get that adjustment, I think that really helps.
Right.
With that, so.
And even with the larger users, that could probably ease some of their concerns too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why my first question is always, have you had a plumber check for leaks? Because it wouldn't affect your sewer bill.
Well, when we have an existing policy in place and we're not going to change it, do we have to move a recommendation for that, or do we just move on to the next item? I think we can probably just move on to the next item, can't we? If there's no interest in changing the policy at the time.
I don't even have a motion yet.
Or just move on.
Do I have a motion? And If I don't get a motion, I believe it would die for, so we'll move on. Thank you, Gabe, for coming up and we
The
move
next
now
one, Security deposit.
to, oh, just stay right there. We move now to item Q, which is a security deposit for customer classes other than single-family residential on page 46. Do I have a motion? Let's talk about this one as well then. Ms. Benson?
Yeah, I would move that we allow commercial accounts who have a 60-month good pay history to no longer need to have a security deposit.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
Okay, Ms. Benson. All right, and the questions, comments?
Could we hear from the staff on what they think?
Thank you. Would you like to talk to us about this, Gabe?
Sure. Our recommendation is that we keep the existing policy. Again, it can increase our loss. It's just state what it is. It's a security deposit. We have a lot of customers that actually sometime their business don't fail until 5 years. And so the 6th year we get that deposit back and there is no safety net for us. Case in point would be one of the large apartment stores just closed here in Pensacola. Had a $30-something thousand bill with us, but we were able to get about $3,000 from that security deposit, and that was money that we didn't have. And that's what as far as just not for when they file bankruptcy. They can file bankruptcy, but that security deposit still sits on file. 9 years later, they go out of business. We still have that to apply towards the final bill. And that's the reason we are asking that it stays in place.
Dr. Walker?
I remember once, years ago, looking over the list of billings that had not been paid and we had written off in a particular year. And it's the only time I ever did this because it's very boring and long, lengthy task to do. But I did look through the whole list one year, found one of my students at UWF who had moved to Washington, D.C. on an expensive well-paid internship. I turned her address in. I happened to have her Washington address. I turned it into ECUA. But more to the point, the biggest single customer account that wasn't paid that year was by a business, and a very prominent business at the time. So the old Driftwood restaurant. Yeah. So many of you will remember that. And it was something like $12,000 or $16,000, something like that. And they declared bankruptcy. They shut down, declared bankruptcy, and were gone. And so I'm reluctant to give back the deposits.
Ms. Benson?
Well, and I understand that there are always going to be those cases where that happens. But it just seems to me that there are many more businesses in this community that are part of the fabric of the community who have a deposit which sits there in perpetuity. It's money that could be used to invest in their business, to create jobs. And I think it is a matter of goodwill, and 5 years is a pretty long time for a company to be in business. That's usually the cutoff. Businesses fail before the 5 years. We're going to get those that this happens, but it sounds like our security deposit doesn't really make a big dent in what they owe anyway. There are very few things that we can do to create goodwill with the businesses of this community. This is one. I think the cost to us is not great, and by allowing them to invest in their business, to invest in their people, it's a good thing for our community. So I support waiving it after 60 months.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Do I have any further? Dr. Walker?
Yes. how do we get a situation in which a business goes out of business, shuts down, and they had a $3,000 deposit, but they owed us when they shut down $30,000? Something's wrong with our security deposit system, it seems to me.
Right. A lot of these businesses are basically just paying their delinquent bill, and we allow them to pay the delinquent account. Long as they keep it from being 30 days or more, we will accept the payment and continue the water service.
Why isn't the security deposit larger if they are capable of generating a total bill that 10 times larger than the security deposit?
Now, we will increase their deposit 2.5 times their highest bill. So we will increase it. But it's just when these businesses go out of business or fail or file bankruptcy, we have nothing else to fall back to get something back that they owe ECUA and the ratepayers. I wanted to add, if I could, Dr. Walker, I did take a look at most municipalities such as ours. Most governmental entities require deposits to stay on file. I have it in the proposal from Gulf Breeze, City of Milton, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Panama City. One required that they have an 850 credit score. They would put X amount of dollars up front, and then after 6 months, they had to provide a credit score at 850 before they would allow, and then they had to take automatic withdrawals out of their checking account. Normally, like Gulf Power, your private entities, you'll see it a little bit different, but most of your government entities, this is the norm.
Madam Chairman, I'm not persuaded by Mr. Brown's responses. It seems to me that we I think we should not only keep the current policy, but look at charging for larger deposits, security deposits, because something's not working when we only get $3,000 when they owe us $30,000.
Thank you. Mr. Hammer?
I'm sure there's more than just the 5 that are listed here of cities in Florida that do the same type of thing. Curious to know how many of these cities, such as like Miami, Tampa, and Orlando, what do they do? How many are in there that do opposite of what we do?
Right. If I recall, Miami followed the same norm. I tried to get some that were close, some that were similar to us, but from what I recall, like I said, Jacksonville all follow the same suit. Most of the governmental entities require the deposits to stay on file.
Do you remember how many didn't, though? I guess
no.
that was my question. How
No,
many are other than that?
from what I recall, as I recollect with my memory, I didn't run into any that just totally gave a deposit back. It was some other requirement. Like I said, one would require the deposit to go back, but you had to have an 850 credit score.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Benson?
And first of all, we're on the same team. I don't mean to challenge you too much because you're watching out for the bottom line, which is what you need to do. As I recall, when we discussed this before, we said that the moment somebody is late, that triggers, that this no longer applies. So it's only those people who have a perfect billing history, which I think is very important. And if they're 10 days late, the deposit goes back. I mean, I think there are ways to protect ourselves, but also create the goodwill of doing this. I think it would be worth looking at the history and how many of those bad examples are there, because I could be persuaded if you have lots of driftwoods that this has happened, maybe this is a bad idea, but I'd like to see that it was more than just the exception.
Right.
That it was somebody who had perfect credit history and then went belly up, and that could be the case.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Booker?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
Based on the policy that's currently in place, how long have this policy been here?
It's been in place since I've been here, and that's been 25 plus years.
Okay, so it have not been reviewed again, implemented changes or
It,
anything?
it has, I think, the board took a look at it 2018, July 2018. I just revised this some, but it came up in 2018, and I want to say it came up due to a customer's concern.
Yeah, I remember when you
Yeah.
spoke on it, yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering, based on the different situations that are being implemented here today regarding customers that's having deposits in place, but their usage exceeds the deposit. So I was just wondering whether or not, you say it's been in place for about 25 years, so, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Booker. So, go ahead, Mr. Perkins.
What does the city of Pensacola do with the gas deposits?
Now, I didn't check with the city of Pensacola. I basically looked at companies that had the water and sewer services.
Oh, okay. What about residential? Do we refund residential deposits at any point?
Yes. And part of the deposit refund policy looked at the usage. Our residential customer usage is nothing like the large meter usage. And I brought some data here. It's just like if you take, for instance, a customer that has a 2-inch meter. That's most of your large user customers. They can use up to 200 gallons a minute. So when you compare that to a 5/8 inch meter using 20 gallons a minute, you can see what the cost can be when you start multiplying that by 60 minutes and just say 12 hours a day.
Well,
Yeah. How many corporations do we have that are using that kind of water every day? I mean,
We
there's
have
a lot
quite a
of
few.
small businesses here too, though.
Right.
gonna
And
fall
the
under the
smaller
same rule.
businesses, they pay a smaller deposit. Their deposit runs about $118 that we keep on file for a 5/8 inch meter. It's basically when you start hitting 3 inches or above, where you may get in $1,000. The rest of them range from $118 to about $724, and that's for water and sewer.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Perkins.
I'm a little bit perplexed, and the reason is that when we did the capital improvement fee, we were told that most of our people have 5/8 inch meters, and that it would be about $5 a month. Now we're told that most of our people have 2-inch meters, which I have found to be the case, and it's about $15 a month in increase. So that discrepancy concerns me a little bit. But the thing is if we give residential customers a rebate, and that was the one thing I wanted to make sure of before we acted on anything as far as commercial customers, you know, I couldn't get 5 years on-time payment, you know, if I tried. You know, every once in a while I'm gonna be late. You know, I just get busy and stuff, and most of the time, 95% of the time, it's on time. But at some point during that 5-year period, I'm going to be late, and that's going to start the clock all over again on me for another 5 years. So I would probably under this scenario never ever get to use it. But if it's an incentive for people to be on time, I think we should reward that. I mean, we're getting the money on time or early, and you know, private entities do it. I think it would be pretty rare that we you know, had a serious default. I'm still also perplexed about the 3,000 and the 37,000. I don't understand how that happened under our current policy if we're increasing it based on their usage to 2.5 times their bill. I don't really understand how that situation happened, but I would you know, be leaning toward trying to do this and create some goodwill with the business community. The ECUA has a reputation of being pretty hardcore toward the business community. I mean, we're very, very demanding from our engineering department. We're very, very demanding on finances. We're seen as real rigorous and real unaccommodating by the business community. Now, some of that is we should be. You know, we're not going to let them build shoddy lift stations, and our ratepayers have to eat that. You know, but if we've got a chance to try and remedy some of those relationships with the community at large for what would be little to nothing, and what would encourage people to pay earlier on time and actually probably positively impact our bottom line from a cash flow basis. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like that big a risk, and it seems like it would be the right thing to do. So it may not pass, that's fine, but if it does, I think I'm going to probably lean towards supporting Ms. Benson's motion.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments or questions? If not, I have a couple myself. Ms. Ritz?
I was listening and I'm wondering what would happen if you go to the policy of rebates, that should also kick in the automatic deduct from the checking account. In other words, if they're going to receive a rebate, they have to be on the roster for automatically having that payment come out of their checking account. Has that been put in the mix?
No, it has not.
And I personally think that would be a mistake, because you would probably be doing more of the rebate, more of the refunds if we had it automatically deducted. I mean, I don't want them to miss one, but if they do, we start it all over. So I think it'll bring that number down of us actually having to do those refunds. But if somebody's that conscientious and paying that much attention and making sure they're on time, I think we ought to reward the good behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Ritz?
Modern generation is moving toward having it deducted and not paying paper. So I humbly challenge you on that one.
You are welcome to ask for an amendment to the, but yes.
I would like to add an amendment to the proposal that part of the payment or refund payment is geared to having it automatically deducted from a checking account.
So, Ms. Ritz, you would be asking the maker of the motion?
She can
And-
just propose an amendment.
Okay. And do we?
She would need a second.
Okay. Do we have a second to a amendment to the motion? If not, the amendment to the motion dies. Dr. Walker?
What is the motion, please? Is it the staff recommendation?
No, sir. The motion is, go ahead, Ms.
To refund the deposit for any businesses who have been in business for more than.
Turn your microphone on.
Sorry.
That's okay.
More than 60 months and with no missed payments.
Maker was Ms. Benson, second was Mr. Perkins, and now Ms. Ritz is asking for an amendment to add that the customer has to have automatic bank draft payments in place for this. And there was not a second. So it died, and we are now back to the initial, Mr. Perkins.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with no late payments rather than no missed payments.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
no late payments.
And no late payments.
That was my intent.
Thank you. Mr. Hammer?
You may or may not know the answer. Just in a given year, how many businesses do you think is affected by this? Like for example, right there, the one that went bankrupt, so that's $3,000. How much would we lose as ECUA in a given year?
I'm going to go ahead and put my question in here. Go ahead and answer that question.
I don't have the answer to that question.
I'm going to go ahead and, I was going to hold my comments till the end, but I'm going to say that we are a government municipality, and bankruptcy should in no way hinder us for collection of our payments. So I would respectfully ask that we ask our attorney about that, because I don't think municipalities are written off by bankruptcy, are they? Can we lean against
If
I
we
mean,
have
we
a
don't-
lien, if we have a lien against the property, they wouldn't have to honor that lien.
right?
And normally, we will file a lien on most of these property owners, but when you start looking at, as the company I spoke of, they don't own, they lease. so we're not able to
Okay.
file liens.
So that's the reason I brought this up when
Yeah.
Mr. Hammer brought that up, because I want to say, if they own property, as a municipality, we can lien that property, and then we do not lose priority in a bankruptcy, we do not lose priority in a foreclosure, we do not lose priority at any time. So with that in mind, that question should be how many that are not property owners do we have walk away? So, you see what I'm saying, Mr. Hammer? Okay. Go ahead.
I'll have to get that answer for
Okay.
you. I don't have it.
Thank you. And I hope that everybody understood that on the board. If they do own property, we are a legal municipality. We can lien the property, and our lien is superior as a municipality to any foreclosure, bankruptcy, or what, on that property. So when that property is sold for foreclosure, bankruptcy, or just by the person, we would be the first person to collect. And we have nice municipal lien search companies that make sure that you get paid.
I think that's a great point. And then what if it's a business owner that we know leases, then charge them a higher deposit?
I
Because
don't,
we fall under different rules then, right? Because they lease, we can't come, I like what you said, but should we treat a business owner that leases differently then, to cover ourselves?
go ahead.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think it makes it a little bit complicated. I think we do this pretty cleanly. This is something we can revisit if we start to have problems with it. Policies can be
Yeah.
changed. But I think it's worth doing for the goodwill and
Yeah. Thank you,
Miss-
Mr.
yeah,
Perkins.
Mr. Hammer's question is a good question, but I would worry we'd get into legal challenges that we're treating different businesses differently. So without any legal guidance on that, I'd be nervous about implementing that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, treating people differently. Thank you so much, Gabe, for coming. And, I mean, if this passes, I do think that we all want you to keep us abreast of the effect that it has on the utility, and if it has a negative
Most
effect, we will certainly have to look at it again. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your time. So, any further questions or comments? If not, we are voting on refunding after 60 months of good pay with no late fees to any small business, or any business. Okay, thank you. Please vote. Great dialogue, good questions. Mr. Hammer, I appreciate all your input, and Ms. Ritz as well. Dr. Walker and all the board members. And it passes 7-1.
One thing, directly related to this, but as far as voting, one thing I've noticed about our voting is that when it displays, it doesn't say who voted how. And I had a situation.
It does.
It does. Oh, it says
Yes.
down below? Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at it at the top.
Yeah,
The second sweep.
I had a situation last week where I thought I voted one way and I voted another way, but I didn't see, I just looked at the top. So down at the bottom.
yeah,
it
in
shows-
red.
Okay,
it'll
okay, thanks.
show you.
That'll help me.
And
Thank you, Ms.
if I may,
Benson.
Mr. Perkins, if you wanted to have that vote up for reconsideration, it may be worth doing at the next meeting. If that happens, we can always do that.
Okay. Thank you. We move now to the informational reports on page 49 and 50. Do we have any questions or comments, Ms. Ritz?
The dry weather, I wondered how that is impacting the aquifers that ECUA draws its water from.
Good question. Ms. Ritz? Mr. Sorrell?
Very little impact on the aquifer. It's so large and well supplied that it's very little drawdown on that aquifer at this point in time.
I've lived in places where once what I call the monsoon season ended and the dry weather season began, we had to undergo strict water conservation. That's why I asked, because we're having quite a bit of a dry spell now.
Mr. Perkins?
A lot of people take it for granted, but we have a very abundant, plentiful aquifer here, and people in South Florida would love to have the water that we have. They may come after it one day, actually.
I always worry about that.
Yeah, we're really blessed, and we take that for granted. I can't recall a situation where we've had to implement water conservation measures because of drought. I think at one time, we may have at one time way back, but it was pretty severe. But it's been dry, and I've left my hose on accidentally overnight. I know my bill's going to be up there. I hate it, but it has been dry.
I noticed a higher bill because I put in new landscaping at the wrong time. I've been having to water all day, every day, and it's terrible. Any unfinished business? New business? And we come now again to open forum. I do not have any pink slips. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.